people that were acting like Biden was really the president, acting as if they had protection. I mean, I've heard people confess to treason on MSNBC, like, because they thought they were able to be protected by their people, so they didn't think they had anything to hide.
Have you heard of Derek Johnson?
Yes. Yeah, he talks about continuity of government. He's got a bunch of videos about it.
Yep.
Yeah.
If you get a chance, Nelson, if you want to learn what may have been going on over the last 8 years or more, do a search for Rattle Trap 1776.
Right.
Derek Johnson.
Right.
He's ex-military guy.
Yeah.
Now retired. Released a video, like a rant video.
Damn.
So 4 or 5 years ago now, a while ago. Went nuts, but he went viral because he was calling out all the military and all of these supposed patriots and how, you know, they were just empty voices, and he was just so mad about what was going on in his country. And then he released documentation about what was the continuity of government operation that was ongoing. And he's been releasing videos and appearing on shows, turning up at Mar-a-Lago and in the company of the president and so on. And he's been talking about this operation, basically saying that Trump has been commander-in-chief. And still president, actually. That he, under executive orders, I forget the numbers, he reels and rattles them off every time. He basically retained control, did the same thing as Eisenhower did in the Second World War. Kept control and stayed in power longer because of an executive order.
Stayed in power longer. How did he do that?
War Powers Act. He stayed in control as commander-in-chief and the president.
As the president?
Yeah, at the time.
This is before or after was he elected properly, or you're saying that?
He was originally elected properly, yeah, but he stayed in office because of what happened. I think it was Eisenhower, yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting.
But the original War Powers Act and the statutes and codes, military codes that Trump is operating under now were based on those original statutes and codes and military powers. And they've actually been updated. They were updated around the time, either just as Trump was coming into office or during his term in office. They actually updated all of those powers.
Okay.
But he does talk and release an awful lot of information about what's been going on, and that, as was said there, and in others, we caught them all. We got everything.
Right, and actually, I think that they may even have the judge that Glenn filed papers on with the Judiciary Committee of the Senate in the state, which nothing was done against her. But
they very well could, yeah.
We got a strange letter about 3 or 4 months ago, where she was responding to the quorum nobis,
right,
out of the blue after a year and a month, going to be brought up on Trump. But I had mailed Mar-a-Lago a letter while in jail, explaining who did what. And they do have all the evidence, meaning it's there if they ever want it. They have record. They can get in and from anywhere to look at the hearings. So I think They may have everything, including this woman, which I think should get 5 years. Hard labor for what she did.
Well, it's essentially treason, isn't it?
It's being nice. I'm gonna tell.
So that's why if you remember 107 talking about a lot of people that now's the opportunity, they got a small window they can come clean.
Yeah.
And and the reason is that any county, any clerk or any employee of the elections department that was helping steal the elections, what they're doing is they're giving aid and comfort to the enemy in a time of war. That is like death penalty. And so they might not get the death penalty, but they're not going to like what's going to happen. And so their best bet is to come clean and say, you know what I mean? And because they come clean, you know, it's going to mitigate it, at least at a minimum. You see what I'm saying?
But they're only doing that. They don't need the evidence, I don't think.
No, at this point, they don't.
They just,
It'll
it's
just
your
make the
opportunity
prosecution-
not to die.
Right.
It's the prosecution.
And maybe instead of spending the rest of your life in prison, maybe you'll only spend 5 years or something like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Anyways, yeah, it's that's why I say it's going to get really, really ugly. So that's what we're going to be talking about today with Go Trump Go. So first of all, I'm not a liar. Well, I'm in a lawyer. No, I'm in a liar. You should never take my word for anything. You should always do your own research. I provided references to aid you in your research, but I don't know everything. I'm open to any ideas. There's 4 types of people you'll meet in your life. There's the people who try to wake up the slaves. There's the slave masters. There's the people who have no idea they're slaves. And there's the people who like being slaves. Which one are you? Do you really know for sure? Are you who you think you are? If you can see through the illusion, then you are the solution. If people do not know their basic rights and freedoms, how can they know when or if their rights and freedoms are being infringed? And that's the biggest issue that I see, is people don't assert their rights. And if you don't assert them, you lose them. Never forget the men who started this country are marijuana growing, whiskey drinking. If you think about it, that's exactly what they were. All tyranny needs to gain a foothold is for people of good conscience to remain silent. I don't trust the government. I don't trust the medical, pharmaceutical, industrial complex. I don't trust the military industrial complex. I don't trust the mainstream media. I don't trust the bankster criminal cabal that owns the government, owns the medical, pharmaceutical, industrial complex, owns the mainstream media, military industrial complex, and owns the mainstream media. And if you call me a conspiracy theorist, I don't trust you. Government's not reason, it's not eloquence, it is force. Like fire, it's a dangerous servant and a fearful master. So McCarthy was right. You know who? Joe McCarthy. This is on Wikipedia. Joseph McCarthy. McCarthy was right. Joseph Raymond McCarthy, November 14th, 1908 to May 2nd, 1957, was an American politician who served as a Republican U.S. Senator from the state of Wisconsin from 1947 until his death at 48 years old in 1957. So at 48, damn, I'll bet you they killed him.
Certainly possible.
Anyways, beginning in 1950, McCarthy became one of the most visible public face of a period in the United States in which Cold War tensions fueled fears of widespread communist subversion. He alleged the numerous communists and Soviet spies had sympathizers that infiltrated the United States federal government, universities, film industries, and elsewhere. Ultimately, he was censured by the Senate in 1954 for refusing to cooperate with and abusing members of the committee established to investigate whether or not he should be censured. The term McCarthyism, coined in 1950 in reference to McCarthy's practices, was soon applied to similar anti-communist activities. Today, the term is used more broadly to mean demagogic, reckless, unsubstantiated accusations, as well as public attacks on the character or patriotism of political opponents. So I think McCarthy was right. My contact information is sovereigntyinternational.wordpress.com. My website is sovereigntyinternational.fyi. My email address is engineerwin@yahoo.com. My YouTube profile is Sovereign Living. My Facebook community page, I deleted it due to censorship on the part of Facebook. My private group on Facebook called Sovereignty International is being deleted. My Google private group called Administering and Public Servants. Follow me on Steemit at Sovereignty International, HowTube on Sovereignty International, Rumble, Sovereignty International, and Truth Social at Engineer Win. Now, I've deleted my profile on X because they were censoring me. The Norman Dodd testimony. How many know about Norman Dodd? Nelson does, because I've talked about it before.
I love reading that testimony.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it?
There's hope for the world.
There is, and that goes to show it's in support of McCarthy. In 1953, Norman Dodd was a retired banker who was asked by the Reese Committee, which is the House Committee on Un-American Activities, to investigate the tax-exempt foundations to see if they're helping the communists. He went to Ford Foundation and the Carnegie Endowment and the Guggenheim Foundation, and they openly admitted that their objective was to prepare the United States for a merger with the Soviet Union, and that their instructions were coming from the White House. So that's telling me Truman, because I don't believe Eisenhower would have been doing that. These tax-exempt foundations gave him complete access to their records. They needed to gain control of the State Department and the educational system. Matter of fact, they went and approached the Guggenheim Foundation, and they said, would you appoint a academic, a teacher to Princeton or Harvard, one of these very prestigious schools, that would teach history the way we want it taught? And they said, sure. And so, anyways, Norman Dodd sent a young assistant to research their records. They went and freely said, no problem. You can go ahead and research our records, and we'll give you complete access to them. And Norman Dodd sent a young assistant to research their records, and she was so devastated by what she found out that she had to stop, and she had to go for counseling. I mean, she was just completely devastated by it. Harry S. Truman, presidents, okay? Harry S. Truman was president from April 1945 to January 20th, 1951. So that's
1 plus
49. Yeah, right. 1 plus 2 years, I guess. Eh?
Yeah, that's because he became president when Roosevelt died.
Right.
So it was 6 years.
Right. Eisenhower was president from January 20th of 1953 until January 20th of 1961. So it looks like this stuff was happening in the early 50s, and that was during the Truman administration. Because matter of fact, Truman blackballed General MacArthur. This was one of the things 107 said, is that MacArthur. The reason he got blackballed is what happened is they were supposed to get Truman's permission to do everything, right? And when they got Truman's permission, invariably the communists would be there waiting for them to conduct when they conducted their operation. So MacArthur quit letting Truman know, and so then he started winning the battles. And so Truman blackballed MacArthur, and Truman was also responsible for our membership in the United Nations. Lindsey Williams. How many of you know who Lindsey Williams is? Okay, you know, and some people know about Lindsey Williams, some don't. He was a Southern Baptist preacher. He went to the Alaska Pipeline to preach. The elite liked him and invited him to their board meetings, and they gave him a room in their bunkhouse to stay. And for the last 30 years, and this was, I don't know how long it took to build the Alaska Pipeline during that time period. Anyways, for the last 30 years, 2 or 3 times a year, Lindsey Williams would do a video on what the elite were planning on doing, because the people that he met there would tell him, this is what they're planning on doing. And when Trump got elected, the elite told Lindsey Williams that God had intervened. And so I think that I mean, the elite said it. I mean, that basically Trump was on a mission from God, basically. See, and counter-insurgency. And so that's what my book is about. Trump, a true American patriot or not? It was Mike Blackwell asked me to write the book, and it took me about 6 weeks to write the book because I just took a lawsuit and manipulated it and turned it into the book. And then Mike had to babysit me for 6 months to get it ready to publish. And so I put him on the book because he babysat me through the whole process. So it's I took a lawsuit, so therefore it's about 95% provable facts. I use court cases, law dictionary definitions, international treaties to prove everything I say in there. But there is a little bit of opinion. Anyways, Mike asked the company, hired a company actually, to help us publish the book, and they wrote the back. This is on the back of the book right here, and I think they really nailed it here. And it says, in Trump, a true American patriot or not, Glenn Fernwell and Mike Blackwell reveal the depths of corruption, deceit, and manipulation infesting our political system for hundreds of years, regardless of political affiliation. Read the hard evidence that exposes how our elected officials sold Americans into slavery. Understand the Founding Fathers' true intent when they formed our Republican form of government. Discover the influence of the satanic Roman cult on our politicians and political system. Does Donald Trump want to transfer power back to we the people? In Trump, you'll see the great battle that is upon us. And I'll tell you, it is. It's going to be huge. And Trump is in the middle of it. You can order the book from Amazon, or you can get it from my website. I prefer you order it from my website. I'll send you an autographed book, but it's up to you. Do you want to know the origins of the deep state? Who's behind it? Do you want to know why it's called the Trump administration? Do you want to know what an administration is? There's nothing in government that's by accident. Do you want to know how Trump came to be president? He was invited. I don't know how many of you have heard of Jerome Corsi. He's from Harvard, and he's written a bunch of books. He's got a website and a YouTube channel. Anyways, he says there's a YouTube video where he says that in 2015, 5 generals came to see him, and they said they were going to overthrow Obama. And he said, well, you can do that if you want, but you might want to go talk to Donald Trump first. 3 months later, he gets a phone call. They decided not to overthrow Obama because Donald Trump had agreed to run for president. Do you want to know who owns Congress? Yes. Who owns Congress? It's not we the people either. They are. That's why Pelosi would get up there and say, we can't read this bill until after we pass it. Do you want to know why they're called law enforcement officers? I've got a law of war manual sitting right over there, and it's full of stuff about law enforcement officers. Do you want to know how you have become a slave? Well, if you're forced to work for the government for nothing, then you're a slave. Isn't that the definition of slavery? That sounds like taxes. Do you want to know what the root cause of the War of Independence was? It's in the book. It's the same thing that's going on right now. Do you want to know why every president goes to visit the Pope on their first international trip? It's in the book.
Excuse me 1 second. I was logging on to your thing here. Someone's saying the volume's way too low.
Well, I have no control over it, and it's because they need to turn their volume up.
Okay.
I've got it up as high as I can get it. They need to turn their volume up. And no more interruptions, please. So I already told you about Mike Blackwell, and I already told you about Jerome Corsi and the 95% provable facts. Howard Hughes, it's my opinion, okay? It's my opinion that all of these billionaires, when they get to be billionaire, they're told that you're going to go along with our program or you're going to turn up dead. So David Wilcock talks about Howard Hughes in one of his videos. He says that Howard Hughes got blackballed after World War II, and he couldn't get any defense contracts, and so he got some young ladies to go and sleep with the military-industrial complex types and find out from Pillow Talk what they were, why he was not getting defense contracts, and they found out that they were planning on doing what the Georgia Guidestones was talking about. They wanted to kill off about 95% of the population on the planet, and they wanted to have a global plantation. And so Howard Hughes had a set of manuals published and procedures on how to defeat the whole thing. Remember, Kennedy was circulated $6 billion worth of U.S. Treasury notes. They killed him, and they killed his brother. They killed a bunch of people, and so that's probably why Howard Hughes was hiding out all the time, because he figured he was next. Matter of fact, Trump is actually talking about getting a circumventing. He wants to shut the Federal Reserve down, and he wants to change the IR internal revenue service to the external revenue service. And I think that Trump, the same thing happened with Trump. I think he was told to go along with the program, and I think he thumbed his nose at him, and they tried to kill him. There was a helicopter crash in 1984. I started out in 1976 as a mechanic on helicopters, so I happen to know a little bit about helicopters and what goes on with helicopters. And that helicopter crashed because the blades came off, and I can tell you that blades don't come off of helicopters. That had to be sabotage of some sort, because blades are designed not to come off. There's all sorts of life-limited parts in these helicopters, and what happens is that after a certain period of time, then they have to be stopped to make these parts. And so, anyways, blades don't come off of helicopters. Helicopters crash for a lot of reasons. I've seen helicopter crashes. I've seen them up close, and they crash for a lot of reasons, but not because the blades come off. Anyways, okay, keep moving. In reality, they're not after me, they're after you. I'm just in the way. Thank you, Donald Trump. So about 18 months prior to the 2020 election, Trump issued an executive order about foreign interference in our elections, authorizing seizure of assets and other actions. And actually, Obama, I just found out watching that Patrick Byrne movie, The Enemy Within, Obama issued a similar order. And so there's more than one order that justify this. In the news in the 2020 election, during the election, the Dominion voting machines transmitted data to satellite owned by the Italian defense contractor and leased to the Vatican. I remember that on the news. And this came out in the news, and the Italian prime minister resigned, and a big shakeup in the Italian parliament. And White House counsel Sidney Powell went home at night. This was when Congress was meeting to decide whether they were going to certify the election. And Sidney Powell went home at night expecting to come back in the morning to prepare Insurrection Act paperwork for Trump to sign. When she came back in the morning, her White House pass had been revoked by Mark Meadows, chief of staff. Some people were calling Mark Meadows a traitor. And Trump offered National Guard for security in D.C. During all of that, and Nancy Pelosi declined. So rumors. They say there's about 200 generals supporting Trump in the counter-insurrection with Trump. Now, Trump has actually said that again, and that goes to what Jerome Corsi said, that 5 generals came to see him and say they were going to overthrow Obama, and Trump agreed to run for president. So there's another rumor that we seized a couple different stories, 250 or 650 airplane loads of gold from the Vatican. Well, knowing about airplanes, I've worked on airplanes all my life. I'm figuring, the biggest airplanes would carry about 100 tons of gold. and so then you're talking 25,000 tons or 65,000 tons, depending on um, which story is true. I don't have, but that I did see was a story from the Italian police where they said that they saw U.S. troops in the Vatican around that time. And so that would be consistent with that happening. That's also consistent with the executive order that said or not the executive order, with the news report that showed that those Dominion voting machines were transmitting their data to an Italian satellite leased to the Vatican. Okay? And that's also consistent with the next slide I'm going to show you, where the Pope is not too happy when Trump goes to see him. That was after the 2016 election. Anyways, so the Pope knew what was coming. So another rumor, Trump regularly met with generals in the middle of the night. And during that time, the generals, that's when Sidney Powell was going to come back and prepare paperwork to sign the Insurrection Act. I remember that being on the news. The generals told Trump he could sign the Insurrection Act, but when Lincoln signed the Insurrection Act, within 6 months, we were in a civil war, and they believed the same thing would happen again. And they had gamed out all sorts of civil war scenarios, and the Republic does not survive. And so the rumor is that Trump decided not to sign the Insurrection Act to wake people up to what's going on. And he's really good at that. Anyways, this is a picture of the Pope, I meant. And this is not to say anything bad about people that happen to be Catholic. There's friends of mine. I've got lots of good friends that are Catholic, and they're the ones that are telling me this stuff is going on. And so, matter of fact, there's a friend of mine, Dr. Joe, that his sister is devout Catholic, and she used to call the Pope, call him Frank, because he's not Christian, so they kind of disrespected him, you know what I mean? And so they called him Frank. Anyways, so if you notice here, the Pope is laughing and chuckling with Obama. That means that's because Obama's giving him what he wants, and he's not too happy with Trump, is he? And so that's telling me that he knows he doesn't like what Trump is doing or going to do, and this was after the 2016 election. Okay, this was so. Anyways, he doesn't look too happy there, does he? He looks downright pissed off.
I still haven't found anything where Trump has been on any international travels since getting back into office.
No, he hasn't. You're right. I don't believe he has.
I don't think so.
Well, he went to the Pope's funeral. That was actually because it said on CNBC that he talked to Zelensky at the Pope's funeral.
Yes,
that was, and so my attitude is, where's my phone? My attitude is that the Pope is in hell now, where he belongs. But I guess that's up to God. That's not up to me. And I'm glad it's up to God, and let God be the one to decide. But there was an article on CNBC about wow, interesting. Right. This is on CNBC. Says Trump talks tougher on Putin, meets Zelensky at Pope's funeral. And so, I mean, how much can you trust the news media anyways? Mm-hmm. But at least, he did meet with Zelensky. Here's a picture of him in the Basilica, I guess, in the Vatican, where him and Zelensky are talking. Mm-hmm. So, who knows? So keep things moving here. So rumors, more rumors. Right, I already talked about that. Trump decided not to sign the Insurrection Act in an effort to wake people up to the communist insurrection underway. And so there's, if you think about it, it's an insurgency and a counter-insurgency. And so there's a bunch of generals. These 200 generals have launched a counter-insurgency. Trump would be indicted, but don't worry, it's all part of the show. Just before the first indictment, he came out with a meme that said, "I am your retribution. If you've been wronged by the deep state, I'll go after them when I get back into office." And here it is, right here. For those who've been wronged and betrayed, I am your retribution. And so what he's doing, think about it, he's jerking their chain. And he's good at that, isn't he? He likes to jerk their chain. Copies of these documents can be found on my website and linked under my recent videos. For a complete set of YouTube videos with private information, shares a DVD with over 100 searchable law dictionaries and other books and forums, contact me privately at engineerwin@yahoo.com. Donations to support this work are appreciated. I prefer gold or silver coin, but as an extremely less desirable alternative, I can accept the IOUs, the Federal Reserve notes, the forced loans, the securities, the cash app, gifts, checks, money orders, etc. Send me an email for particulars. So in the news, everybody saw it. Trump was indicted several times. Trump was subjected to the kangaroo courts and the weaponized justice system. Just before his most recent indictment, he came out and started talking about public hangings, and there was at least 2 attempted assassinations. And here's the mugshot, and I think that he must have planned, he must have practiced that, in front of the mirror to get the right mugshot. So here's his mugshot. Trump's booking photograph released by the Fulton County, Georgia Sheriff's Office in Atlanta, Georgia. So it came out in various cases. This is rumors now. It came out in various cases that went through the courts that Chinese officials were in Canada during the election, helping manipulate the 2020 election results. Hunter Biden's geolocated voting machines during the election. Patrick Byrne said that the Venezuelans, the Cubans, and the Chinese were working together to rig the elections in 71 countries around the world, and they're quite proud of and brag about it. Patrick Byrne said the Venezuelans have offered a $15 million bounty for him to turn up dead because he exposed them. Patrick Byrne has published a 3-part video series on Rumble entitled The Enemy Within, in which he shows that Obama was involved in a soft coup. They were trying to overthrow the government. Kash Patel has published an hour-long video on BitChute entitled Government Gangsters, in which he exposes the Russia hoax as well as FBI corruption. Patrick Byrne has said that one of the methods the Venezuelans, the Cubans, and the Chinese and the Serbians use in their Dominion voting machines is to rig the elections is a RAM drive. I don't know how much of you know what a RAM drive is, but it's a drive that they can actually put in the RAM. Nowadays, the RAM can be a lot of space. It can be a huge amount of space. And so having a drive in there and then having software in that drive that they can execute programs and stuff like that is not unrealistic at all. Patrick Byrne says that Obama planned for Hillary Clinton to win in the 2016 election, and says that Obama planned for Clinton to remain in office for 8 years, and that Michelle was going to be president after Clinton for 8 years. So it's basically, and they'd all be getting manipulated by Obama. And so Obama would be in power for 24 years. And Patrick Byrne says they're planning on having China attack us with nuclear bombs, and we'd have to surrender to China, thereby overthrowing the Constitution. McCarthy was right. Since World War II, the military has launched 4 counterinsurgencies. The first 3 failed, and this one is successful so far. Kennedy was the first counterinsurgency and the assassination, and they set him up with the Watergate scandal. Reagan was the third counterinsurgency, and they infiltrated that one. The Cloward-Piven strategy. How many of you know what the Cloward-Piven strategy is? Cloward and Pivens were two communists in the 60s that outlined a three-step strategy to overthrow the Constitution. The first step was spend money like mad to destroy the dollar. The second one is to open the borders and let millions of communist enemies into the country. And the third one is weaponize the justice system to attack patriotic Americans. And it looks like that they were doing all of that. There's a plot in this country to enslave every man, woman, and child. Before I leave this high and noble office, I intend to expose this plot, was a statement made by John F. Kennedy 7 days before he was assassinated. I want to splinter the CIA into 1,000 pieces and scatter it to the winds. Yes, no joke. It absolutely needs to be done. JFK exposes a ruthless conspiracy, the president and free speech. We are opposed around the world by a monolithic and ruthless conspiracy that relies on covert means for expanding its sphere of influence, on infiltration instead of invasion, on subversion instead of elections, on intimidation instead of free choice, on guerrillas by night instead of armies by day. It is a system which has conscripted vast human and material resources into the building of a tightly knit, highly efficient machine that combines military, diplomatic, intelligence, economic, scientific, and political operations. And that was his speech that he gave, part of it, 7 days before he was killed. After he resigned, Nixon became good friends with Donald Trump and tutored Trump on the tactics the communists would engage in. So they say that Nixon is a message in the bottle to the deep state. Bush Sr., Clinton, Bush Jr., Obama, and Biden are all communists. Obama and Biden are both implementing the Cloward-Piven strategy. A very important part of the communist strategy was race war. They wanted to cause anarchy because out of anarchy usually emerges dictatorship. Obama weaponized the news system. They all work to weaponize the justice system. And this here is the horseshoe political theory. The center is where you really want to be. The left and the right are left goes to communism and right goes to fascism, and there's an open at the end because that's anarchy, because out of anarchy usually emerges dictatorship. And so that's why it's like a horseshoe like that, because anarchy doesn't usually last long, and even the good people will say we need to have some sort of government here. Bush Sr., Clinton, Bush Jr., Obama, and Biden are all communists. They spent money like mad to destroy the dollar. They supported foreign dictators. They overthrew good foreign governments. They created gun-free zones. So then that sets the opportunity for false flag operations to disarm the people. So why do you think that the Pope is so happy with Obama and he's so upset with Trump? Maybe it's because justice is coming. All warfare is deception. That's according to Sun Tzu. And you appear weak when you are strong. You appear strong when you are weak. You never, ever tell the enemy what you're going to do. It's all about warfare. Obama and Biden attack Americans. Sovereign citizens or terrorists. Said he would murder any terrorist anywhere, U.S. citizen or not. And they had a weaponized justice system to populate the prisons. And that's what's going on, and we're going to talk more about that later. The White Hats needed to prevent a civil war. They did not want people killing each other in the streets. They needed to wake people up about what was actually happening. The greatest asset is armed, patriotic Americans. There are more arms in the hands of the American people than there is in every other army on the planet combined. I don't know if you know that or not, but yeah, there's a huge amount of arms. Anyways, So Trump's job was to jerk the chain to the communists and get them to expose themselves. The Communist Manifesto, the number one plank is the abolition of private property. That's what I'm dealing with right now. They're trying to steal my land. A heavy progressive and graduated income tax, that's all in place. Abolition of rights of inheritance, I think that Trump eliminated that in his first term. Confiscation of property of all immigrants and rebels. Centralization of credit into the state and a national bank, that's all in place. Transportation and communication centralized into the state. All factories and production centralized into the state. The forced work, everybody is forced to work. That's, somewhat in place. The other two, transportation, communication, factories, production, that's all definitely in place. Eliminate difference between, that's in place, but Trump has been dismantling it. Okay, that's in place, but Trump has been dismantling it. Okay, he's getting rid of the Department of Education. He wants to get rid of the Federal Reserve. There's a bunch of stuff, and he's saying you gotta delete 2 regulations before you can make any new ones. Is what I had. There was an executive order. So Trump's job, in his first presidency, he fired the 7th floor of the State Department. He appointed 3 justices to the Supreme Court. Neil Gorsuch is a really good guy. Brett Kavanaugh he's okay. He's okay. He's ruled with the liberals sometimes, but he's okay. And Amy Coney Barrett is basically a liberal. So she wasn't that good of an appointment, but you just don't know. He's got to follow his advisors, and I think they led him wrong there. He issued an executive order on foreign interference with our elections. He's eliminated the Department of Education and turning it over to the states. He's talked about eliminating the IRS, replacing it with the External Reserve Service, with tariffs. Talked about eliminating the Federal Reserve, eliminating the weaponization of the Justice Department, and the FBI wants to make the U.S. a world hub on cryptocurrencies and no central bank digital currency. And I think that the cryptocurrencies, I think Bitcoin was a psyop by the Defense Advanced Research Agency, DARPA. And so I think that that was something they slipped in by the white hats because they wanted it to run away with itself, because Bitcoin, anybody can mine Bitcoin. So they don't have any control over that at all. He fired 200,000 federal employees, 75,000 employees took buyouts, but there's a lot of government employees. Like 80s, there were 8.5 million Defense Department employees alone. I mean, that's a lot of people, let me tell you. He eliminated, or is trying to eliminate, all DEI employees, diversity, equity, inclusion. They got rid of 10,000 at HHS, CDC, and FDA, and they probably need to get rid of a lot more. Recently issued an executive order designed to overhaul the State Department. And absolutely, and that's going to the Norman Dodd testimony, because Norman Dodd said that that was one of their priorities, is to take over the State Department. He's been dismantling the communist system that is largely in place. He shut down USAID. USAID was used by the CIA to fund activities. Shut down the Department of Education, wants to fire 20% or more of the total federal workforce, originally threatened 50%. Elon Musk fired 80% of Twitter. I think that's one reason they got Elon Musk in there. Doji found 14 computers that sent out $5 trillion unaccounted for 12 years, over the last 12 years. And Cliff High says that there's actually a bunch of them that have been in place for like 60 years, and they've been just setting out unaccounted for money. In other words, there's no bank account the money is drawn on. It's just a treasury check or a electronic funds transfer, and there's no account that it's drawn on or anything. Just make it out of nothing. Of course, they all make it all out of nothing, but usually normally they have to report it to the Federal Reserve, the Treasury. I think it comes out of it has to come out of some account somewhere, and these ones aren't. Cliff High says it's the tip of the iceberg because there's similar machines that have been operating for 60 years. He called not Cliff High, but Trump called Jerome Powell a major loser. Remember, Trump's job is to jerk their chain. I think I love it. I think that he's setting up the Federal Reserve to blame them for when the crash happens. I think there's going to be a crash, and I think he's setting up to blame Jerome Powell for it. Matter of fact, let's see if it's yeah, it is. It's coming up. Okay, so there's a bond market underway, and Jim Rickards has a bond crash actually underway. And so I think there's going to be a derivative crash, and that's going to be way worse. That's going to be huge. So we'll see. Anyways, there was 2 judges arrested on the 25th of April for obstruction of justice. So the arrests are starting to happen. There's not really big high-profile ones yet, but 2 judges were arrested on the 25th of April. I think in Wisconsin is where they were arrested. And so so we'll see how it all plays out. I mean, it's good to be back in watching it from behind the scenes. You know what I mean? To transition from we need to go to lawful money, okay? And to transition from a debt-related system, all debts have to be extinguished. I don't necessarily agree completely with that, but they need to. There's definitely, it's going to be deflationary for sure. All debts, technically, all debts all debts are extinguished, there's no money in circulation, and that's actually true. And so there's going to be any transition from a debt-related system is going to be deflationary, and so it's going to cause, there's going to be huge swings. So the dollar is going to go up, it's going to go down, it's going to go all over the place. The markets will go up and down and all over the place. So think about it this way: like the dollar is like almost worthless, right? So it takes a $20 bill to buy, what a silver dollar would buy, or actually a $30 bill, $30 to buy what a silver dollar used to buy. It used to be, what do they have, 5 and dime stores where everything was 5 cents and 10 cents. Mm-hmm. And so it's going to go that way eventually. And so the dollar is going to become worth more. Well, that means they've got to shrink the money supply. You see what I'm saying? And so, I mean, it's going to cause huge swings. This is going to cause wild swings in the economy, and things settle into a new equilibrium. I've got a subscription channel. I've got exclusive content available on howtube.com. The basics or the only subscription is $9.99 a month for the videos plus unlimited email consultations. But I'm not a liar. Well, I'm an attorney. No, I'm in a liar. But I can tell you what I would do under certain circumstances and where to find the forms. The only power these New World Order Satanists have over us is through fraud and deception. My agenda is to expose it for all our benefit, but I cannot fight all the battles. Certificates training, foreclosure, estoppel certificates training, corporate denial training, toll roads notice and demand training, invoice training, notice of void judgment training, revocation of signature training, third-party witness training, federal habeas corpus training, revocation of voter registration, criminal complaint training. I've got about 3 of those up there, and I might need to do another one. Lawsuit training, I've got 1 on there, and I probably need to do some more. Other training requests, I'm open to any requests, but it's got to be something that's within the scope of within the law and that I haven't already done. And so, but I'm open to it. Some of the Northeast private information share videos go up there, and some of them are public. I need to do one for a petition for writ of mandamus. Videos taken down by YouTube are all in the exclusive content. There's actually on HowTube, there's over 150 videos up there right now. So there's a bunch of videos, and there's going to be more. But anyways, first views of new uploads, all forms, files, and other instructions are available for free, linked on my videos and on my website. All exclusive content will be on HowTube, and you can buy a subscription there. And HowTube is Sovereignty International. That's the link there. Now, I have no control over the billing on HowTube, okay? I have absolutely no control over that. So don't send me $10 and tell me to sign you up, because I can't do it. Okay, you got to do it through HowTube. So the communist warfare, we were attacked with a biological warfare agent in 2020. We were attacked by China, Cuba, Venezuela with a stolen election. The Vatican is also implicated in the election interference. We were attacked by communist George Soros and the Nazi World Economic Forum. And this is literally a war of good versus evil. So as far as disclosure is concerned, Trump has been releasing classified information piecemeal. He can't release it all at once. He's got to release it a little bit here and a little bit there so people have time to digest it. Once it's declassified, investigators need to look it over. He released the JFK files, and that showed the CIA was involved. I've seen articles that talked about it already. It's going to release the MLK files. X22 report says that Epstein files will be last. 107 says that Epstein was a CIA, MI6, Mossad blackmail operation. They were setting people up to blackmail them. So this is a newsletter that I got from Jim Rickards. Says won't be the last, and so if you think about it, this came out on the 21st of April, 2025, which was 6 days ago. So Jim Rickards is he's a retired admiral. He's also chief counsel at long-term capital management. When they got bailed out, that was the first bailout, and so he's not someone that makes these kinds of statements loosely. So he actually says that gold is going to be $12,000 by the end of this year, and it might be. He doesn't make those kinds of statements loosely, I'll tell you right now. And so there's obviously a bond market crash. Now, what happens when the bond market crashes? Think about it. The price goes down and the yield goes up. And so that's what's essentially happening. He says that's related to the price of gold, too. So every system of law known to civilized society generated from or has as its component one of three well-known systems of ethics: pagan, Stoic, or Christian. Common law draws its subsistence from the latter. Its roots go deep into that system. The Christian concept of right and wrong and justice motivates every rule of equity. It is the guide by which we resolve domestic frictions and the rule by which all legal controversies are settled. The Republican is the only form of government which is not eternally at open or secret war with the rights of mankind. So I think we're living in Book of Revelation's time period. I think the events talked about in the Book of Revelations are mostly in Europe. I don't know what is happening here, but I do know things that are going on in Europe. Right now, we're in the process of throwing that stuff off. So I think that that's really not going to affect us here, but I don't know how, what's going to be happening here. I think that, I guess we'll see. Statutes have been passed extending the courts of admiralty and vice admiralty far beyond their ancient limits for depriving us of the accustomed and estimable privilege of trial by jury in cases affecting both life and property, to supersede the course of common law, instead thereof to publish and order the use and exercise of the law martial. and for altering fundamentally the form of government established by charter, we saw the misery to which such despotism would reduce us. That's dictatorship, folks. And that's taken from the Causes and Necessity for Taking Up Arms, 1775. Let's see if there's any questions in the chat. Okay. Civil law versus common law. This is a war over the intrusion of civil law over the common law. The court in Diamond versus Harris calls the civil law statutory law superior equity. It is difficult to see how the courts of the state are to ignore the common law as a rule of decision when it's made so by statute and adopt a civil law even though it had the merit of superior equity. That's Texas Courts, 1830. In the meantime, civil law was the form of law imposed in the Roman Empire, which was largely, if not wholly, governed by martial law rule. Equity has always been understood to follow the law. To have superior equity is to turn things on their head. This is exactly what happens when martial law is imposed. If equity is the law, then it follows its own course rather than following the common law, thereby destroying the common law and leaving what is called equity in its place. And that's the non-radical court in the case Diet versus Turner. So what they're talking about is, remember, in the Causes and Necessities for Taking Up Arms, it said that martial law supersedes and replaces common law. And they're confirming that here, okay? And so equity is supposed to follow common law. And when you have martial law, then it supersedes and replaces common law, so there's no common law. So then equity doesn't have anything it's supposed to follow. It can do literally anything it wants. And these judges will actually tell you that. I can do anything I want in here. And so that's why it's evil. It's satanic. And I've actually had judges admit they were doing that too. Normally, equity is required to follow common law. Equity, the Bible's full of equity all over the place. Under martial law, there's no common law. Civil law is governed by martial law. All statutes are civil laws. Under civil law, equity can do anything it wants, thereby destroying common law, which means it's satanic. There was a Catholic monk by the name of Father Malachi Martin, appeared on Coast to Coast AM talk radio program in the 90s and told everyone that in 1955 Satan took over the Vatican. And so that's why that Pope was they call him the Pope of the people. You know, I can't see how that was, you know, how he could have done that, but who knows? But they're all these, it's satanic. Shortly after he turned up dead, that's all Satanism. Roman laws from the Vatican. There's a common law of Europe, a common law of Russia, a common law of Germany, and a common law of Italy. Civil law, Roman civil law, convertible phrases mean the same system of jurisprudence, that rule of action which every particular nation, commonwealth, or city has established peculiarly for itself, more properly called municipal law, to distinguish it from the law of nature and from international law. That's Black's Law Dictionary, 4th edition. So what they're saying is that the 1871 corporations and municipal corporations says right in their act. So they're bringing Roman law and Tamara make no law respecting an establishment of religion under the First Amendment. And they did. Roman law is brought into America with the 1871 municipal corporation. The Roman cult's minor estate was brought into America with the Code of Law for the District of Columbia at 31 Stat 1432. The bar and bar attorneys were changed at the Bar Treaty of 1947, and they're all violations of Article 1 and Amendment. Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. This is Tomlin's Law Dictionary, 1835 edition, on Volume 2, under the definition of mortmain. Yet still it was found difficult to set bounds to ecclesiastical ingenuity. That's the Roman cult, folks. For when they were driven out of all their former holds, they devised a new method of conveyance by which lands were granted not to themselves directly, but to nominal feoffees, to the use of the religious houses, thus distinguishing between the possession and the use, and the receiving the actual profits, while the season of the land remained in the nominal feoffee, who was held by the courts of equity, then under the direction of the clergy. That's the Roman cult, folks. To be bound in conscience to account to assisticate use for the rents and emoluments of the estate. Well, that's taxes, folks. And it is to these inventions that our practitioners are indebted for the introduction of uses and trusts, the foundation of modern conveyancing. So that basically is talking about the Cestui Que Vie Act of 1666, and it's brought into America in the Code of Law for the District of Columbia, and this is unconstitutional under the First Amendment, because Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion. The legal estate to be in Cestui Que use, and a use is usufruct, which is Roman law. So this is where it's codified, 31 CFR 363.6. Individual means a natural person. Minor means an individual who's attained the age of 18 years but has not yet taken control of the securities contained in his or her minor account. So this is all coming from the Vatican. Court means a court of law with jurisdiction over the parties and the subject matter. And so subject matter jurisdiction is extremely critical, and all you have to do is come up with denials of due process of law, and they don't have subject matter jurisdiction because they lose it. Entity means any owner of a Treasury Direct account that's not an individual. Entity is a sole proprietorship, partnership, corporation, limited liability company, or professional limited liability company that trusts the estate of a decedent or the estate of a living person, such as an incompetent or a minor. So that brings in Article 1, Section 8, Clause 3, the Commerce Clause. A civilian. 3 definitions of civilian: a person not serving in a military. See, this is all Roman law. The military is Roman law. A lawyer practicing in a civil law jurisdiction, a scholar in civil law or Roman law. So it's civil law is Roman law. Black's ninth. Status. It's Roman law again. State condition compared to the estate of a corporation that has no status as a citizen outside the jurisdiction where it's created. That's Anderson's Law Dictionary, 1889 edition. A corporation's a citizen's a corporation. They're assaulting you with their U.S. citizen slave, then you are in the District of Columbia. This is Black's Law Dictionary, 8th edition, the law of status. Category law dealing with personal or non-proprietary rights, whether in rem or in personam. It is one of 3 departments into law. Those things that perish by capitis diminutio, which of kind are a usufruct and obligation to services on part of freedmen contracted by oath, and matters enforceable by a statutable action. And that's taken from the commentaries of Gaius, the Rules of Ulpian, translated in 1874. So, again, statutes are Roman law. They're civil law statutes, all statutes. And capitis diminutio, that's why they spell your name in all block capital letters. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel. Don't forget to follow me on Steemit at Sovereignty International. Don't forget to like the video. Don't forget to click on the bell next to the subscribe button so you're notified when there's a new upload on Steam. And don't forget to vote and make your comments. This is the front page of my channel. The arrow is pointing at the bell. The subscribe button's already clicked, otherwise it'd be red. And so there's actually 3 or 4 different options for the bell as to which notifications you want to be notified about. Capitis diminutio is the destruction of the caput or the legal personality. Capitis diminutio, so to speak, wipes out the former individual, puts a new one in its place. Between the old and the new individual, there is legally speaking nothing in common. A juristic personality may be thus destroyed in one of 3 ways: by loss of status libertatis, this is status diminutio maxima; by loss of status civitatis, this is capitis diminutio media; by severance from the agnatic family, this entails capitis diminutio minima. This is taken from the institutes, the textbooks, and the history of the system of Roman private law. So that's Roman private law. It's contracts. Black's Law Dictionary, 8th edition. Capitis diminutio maxima, meaning the maximum loss of status through the use of capitalization. The highest and most comprehensive loss of status. This occurred when a man's condition was changed from one of freedom to one of bondage, when he became a slave. It swept away with it all rights of citizenship and all family rights. That's why they spell your name in all block capital letters. All the prisoners, it's all block capital. We therefore decline to overrule the opinion of Chief Justice Marshall. We hold that the District of Columbia is not a state within Article 3 of the Constitution. In other words, cases between citizens of the district and those of the states are not included in the catalog of controversies over which Congress could give jurisdiction to the federal courts by virtue of Article 3. In other words, Congress has exclusive legislative jurisdiction over citizens of Washington District of Columbia, and through their plenary power nationally, that means dictatorship, folks. So first of all, if you're a state national and you're dealing with a U.S. citizen, you don't get an Article 3 court, number one. And number two, Congress has, in the District of Columbia, its plenary jurisdiction. That's because of the Roman cult of the Roman cult 1871 corporation. Plenary power nationally covers those citizens, even when in one of the several states, as though the district expands for the purpose of regulating its citizens wherever they go throughout the states of the Union. And that's National Mutual Insurance Company of the District of Columbia versus Tidewater Transfer Company, U.S. Supreme Court, 1948. Plenary. It means total. Court's full and absolute power over the subject matter and the parties in the case. It's a dictatorship, folks. Plenary is full, complete, entire. Plenary is full, complete in the courts of admiralty and in the English ecclesiastical courts. Okay, so this is talking about the Roman cult. Causes or suits in respect of different course of proceedings, in each are termed plenary or summary. This is the Roman cult. Plenary. A plenary power or plenary authority is a complete and absolute power to take action on a particular issue with no limitations. It's derived from the Latin term plenus. Now that's using Wikipedia, which is kind of a ho-hum source at best. But they're quoting, but they're also taken in Legal Information Institute, which is Cornell Law School, which is a very good reference. Plenary power, complete power over a particular area with no limitations. The term is often used to describe the commerce power of Congress. Under the Commerce Clause, Article 1, Section 8, Clause 3, Congress is granted full power over interstate commerce. Courts have found that states are not able to pass laws affecting interstate commerce without the permission of Congress. Punishment for a crime whereof a party shall have been duly convicted shall exist in the United States or any place subject to their jurisdiction. That's the current so-called 13th Amendment. And he, the prisoner, has as a consequence of his crime not only forfeited his liberty, but all his personal rights except those which the law and its humanity affords him. He is, for the time being, a slave of the state. The Republican is the only form of government which is not eternally at open or secret war with the rights of mankind. Penitentiary. This is Roman cult again. This is Roman law. See, I think that Trump, I'm not sure how much Trump is gonna. I guess we'll see how far Trump's going to go as far as, because I think that 1871 corporation is unconstitutional. There's a bunch of stuff that the federal government's doing that's just flat out unconstitutional, and so we'll see. Anyways, a penitentiary is a penitent or ordainer of penances. Penance is a punishment imposed by a crime by ecclesiastical laws. Okay, so that's the Roman cult. And even Trump, it's acknowledged in the offense. Penance may be changed into a sum of money to apply to pious uses called commuting. Well, Trump commuted some sentences. So that's Roman law. So that's unconstitutional. Quite frankly, there shouldn't be sentences. Bar is British accredited regency. All attorneys are foreign agents of the Vatican, and so the Bar Treaty of 1947 and the Bar Foundation, the National Bar Foundation in D.C. is unconstitutional. Ends of court. There are certain private with the exclusive privilege of calling men to the bar. British accredited regency. City of London is a foreign territory to the rest of England. City of London was never conquered by William the Conqueror. During the convening of the Imperial Parliament, the bitch or the son of a bitch goes to the throne, does the throne speech. The bitch or the son of a bitch goes to the Temple Bar and requests permission to enter the foreign territory. Temple Bar is a gate into the city of London. The Lord Mayor grants permission and is held as a ransom until he or she returns. So this is a map. Most people don't have the courage to share this. The City of London Corporation is right there. The small little country that almost no one has heard about funded all sides of World War I, World War II, and will start World War III if we do not stop them. You got that right. The reason is because of the concessions of England to the Pope, 1213. We will establish a perpetual obligation and concession, which we will establish from the proper and the special revenues of our aforesaid kingdoms for all the service and customs which we ought to render to them, saving in all things the penny of St. Peter. The Roman Church shall receive yearly 1,000 marks sterling, namely at the Feast of St. Michael, 500 marks, and at Easter, 500 marks. 700 for the Kingdom of Ireland, 300 for England. So 700 for Ireland. No, 300 for Ireland, 700 for England, and it happens twice a year. They get paid twice a year, one at Easter and one at Feast of St. Michael. So after the Magna Carta, after the concessions to the Pope, the king had to raise money to pay his tribute, and King John imposed martial law rule to do things to raise money to pay his tribute. It took only 2 years for the people to figure out what was happening, and the Magna Carta was the result. The Magna Carta, this is a Canadian court case. The Magna Carta is not a unilateral act emanating solely from the spontaneous will of the king, as the charters of the predecessors of John. Neither is it a treaty, for we not say it was concluded between two legitimate and independent sovereignties, nor between two nations, nor is it a law. The barons do not appear in it as subjects, for they are freed from their promise of fidelity, and the king brought captive, placed before them, submitted to the conditions which the conquerors imposed upon him. Magna Carta is therefore a contract, but resembles a treaty concluded between two nations, in that one of the parties, in the virtue of the law of war, can impose its will upon the other one. Magna Carta is full of prohibitions against the crown for their non-judicial proceedings. Section chapter 29, no freeman shall be taken or imprisoned or seized or outlawed or exiled or destroyed in any wise destroyed, nor we go upon him, nor send upon him, but by the lawful judgment of his peers and by the law of the land. Section 38, no bailiff for the future shall upon his own unsupported complaint put anyone to his law without producing credible witnesses brought for their purposes. In other words, the cops don't have authority to complain about shit. If someone else complains, then they have an oath and they can investigate, but they have nothing to say. So to none will we sell, to no one will we refuse delay, right, or justice. And they sell justice all the time with their filing fees. They're nothing but a bunch of thieves and pirates. Don't get me going. He is, however, in a sense, an officer of the state with an obligation to the court. Who are attorneys? These are lawyers, bar members, scum. His first duties to the court and to the public, not to the client. And whenever his duties to his client conflict with those of an officer of the court in the administration of justice, the former must yield to the latter. So he's not working for you. Okay? Don't think he's working for you. Clients are also infant or person of unsound mind. You're an imbecile for hiring an attorney. A ward of the court's an imbecile. A ward of the court's not competent. Everything's about competence and incompetence. That's why they're representing you, because you're not competent to make decisions for yourself. Therefore, the attorney's going to make decisions for you. There's no such thing as an incompetent sovereign. Do you know who you are? The Republic is the only form of government that is not eternally at open or secret war with the rights of mankind. Have you figured it out yet, folks? They're making war on you, which means there's no republic. Or at least for you, there's not. They're making war on you. Have you figured it out yet? Attorney's job is to make sure there's no appealable issues. And how do they do that? They do that three ways. They fail to object to the denials of due process of law. They fail to object to the irregularities in procedure. And they testify against you. Have you figured it out yet, folks? That's what that liar is doing. Whether it's your liar that you hired or the opposing liar, the prosecutor, they're doing the same things. How do they testify against you? They admit the jurisdiction. They enter pleas for you. They falsely accuse you. They continue cases, thereby denying your right to a speedy trial. Absolutely. They do that all the time. In propria persona, in one's own proper person. It is a rule in pleading that pleas to jurisdiction of the court must be pled in propria persona, because if pleaded by attorney, they admit the jurisdiction as an attorney is an officer of the court. He's presumed to plead after having obtained leave, which admits the jurisdiction. How do the prosecutor and your attorney falsely accuse you? Under their rules of ethics, they're not allowed to make false statements. Period. When they make a statement against you, your only remedy is to object to their false statements. If you have an attorney, you're not even allowed to speak. Because of their rules of ethics, any statements they make that are not objected to are admitted as the truth. Judge works for the state, prosecutor works for the state, police or witness works for the state. The vast majority of the disputes that the police initiate on behalf of their employer are also adjudicated by their employer, where the plaintiff, the judge, the antagonist, the police, and the only witness, also the police, all represent the same party. And since no corpus delicti, mens rea, or acts reus can be produced, doesn't technically qualify to be heard according to its own laws, the state, therefore, is indistinguishable from a criminal cartel. And that's the fact. So you have this judge wearing his military uniform, the prosecutor wearing his military uniform, and the pig wearing his military uniform. Without a formal and sufficient indictment or information, a court does not acquire subject matter jurisdiction, and thus an accused may not be punished for a crime. I need to send that to somebody. Oh, look at that. Okay, I need to do this. There we go. Fake indictments, no true bills, not signed. The judge modified the indictment, no receipt from court reporter. If the record does not show upon its face the facts necessary to give the court jurisdiction, they'll be assumed not to have existed. I need to put that in there too. Is in their hotel right now, and so he sent me an email. I got to respond. The Republican is the only form of government which is not eternally at open or secret war with the rights of mankind. They want you dead. Think about it. That minor estate, the sooner you turn up dead, they get to pillage all the fake money in that trust account. Two enemies of the people are criminals and government. You notice government is an enemy of the people? So let us tie down the second with the chains of the Constitution so the second will not become the legalized version of the first. Well said, Thomas Jefferson, and that's exactly what's happened. Greatest danger to American freedom is a government that ignores the Constitution. You got that right, and that's what's happened. And Trump, I think, is trying to get it all straightened out. All court cases are warfare. You are their enemy. They are your enemy. They are not your friends. You never tell the enemy what you planned. You have to set them up and sandbag the bastards. Any violation of their procedures or denials of due process of law. I've never seen any case where they followed all of their codes. They never follow their codes. So the key in any case is to get all of those defects on the record so that you can, it's all appealable issues. The corrupt Star Chamber courts of England required defendants to have counsel. Star Chamber stood for swiftness and arbitrary power, was a limitation on the common law. That means it's military dictatorship, folks. That's Roman law, is what it is. Although the right to self-representation is not a license to abuse the dignity of the courtroom, neither is it a license for the court to impose upon the defendant its own choice of pro se as an essential part of his right to a fair trial. The Republican is the only form of government which is not eternally at open or secret war with the rights of mankind. I wonder what the chat's going on here. Oh, there's a few more. Okay. 26 people watching right now. A bill of attainder. All of this stuff is bills of attainder. You know what? I'm going to get some more tea. I got to fill up my bladder again so then I can go to the bathroom. Right? Isn't that how it works? Bill of Attainder is a legislative act. Well, think about it. If the judge is not a judge, then they're operating as executive authority, especially when there's no separation of powers. Executive authority, legislative authority. And there's court cases that talk about it. They're working for the legislature. Bill of Attainder means legislative acts, no matter what their form, that apply either to named individuals or to easily ascertainable members of a group in such a way as to inflict punishment on them without a judicial trial. Well, there's no judges. Bill of Attainder, right, same definition. Black's Law Dictionary, 8th edition. A bill of pains and penalties is the same thing as a bill of attainder, except that it's less than capital punishment. So a bill of attainder is capital punishment, which means they put you to death, or the bill of pains and penalties is less than putting you to death, which is, they're really all bills of pains and penalties. That's why they call it the penal code, as in penalties. Penal code gives you penalties. Article 1, Section 9, Clause 3, no bill of attainder or ex post facto law shall be passed. That's the state governments. No, that's federal. Article 1, Section 10, Clause 1, no state shall enter into any treaty of alliance. And it lists a bunch of things. Coin money. Pass any bill of attainder. A court can be a court of general jurisdiction for some purposes and a court of limited jurisdiction for other purposes. When, therefore, a court of general jurisdiction proceeds under a special statute, they're all special statutes, that's martial law, it becomes a court of limited jurisdiction for the purpose of such proceeding. So it's proceeding under the statute, then it's a limited inferior court of limited jurisdiction. Accordingly, where a court of general jurisdiction undertakes to carry out a special power, a decision made in the exercise of such powers, treating as a ruling of a court of limited jurisdiction, and the presumption applicable to a court of general jurisdiction that it acted within the scope of its jurisdiction does not apply. It is familiar law that when special statutory authority and derogation of common law is conferred on courts of general jurisdiction, such a court of general jurisdiction becomes quad hoc, a court of inferior or limited jurisdiction. To be the statutes which would deprive a citizen of rights of person or property without a regular trial according to the course and usage of common law would not be the law of the land. Is required to perform in a prescribed manner in obedience to a mandate of legal authority without regard to his own judgment or opinion concerning that act's propriety or impropriety when a given state of facts exists. Discretion, on the other hand, is the power conferred on public functionaries to act according to dictates of their judgment. When acting to enforce a statute and a subsequent amendments to the present date, the judge of municipal court is acting as an administrative officer and not in a judicial capacity. Courts administering or enforcing statutes do not act judicially, but merely ministerially, but merely act as an extension, as an agent for the involved agency, but only in a ministerial and not a discretionary capacity. They're bought and paid for clerks, so they're legislative too. A republican is the only form of government which is not eternally at open or secret war with the rights of mankind. It's the accepted rule, not only state courts, but of the federal courts as well, that when their judge is enforcing administrative law, they're described as mere extensions of the administrative agency for superior reviewing purposes as a ministerial clerk for the agency. Judges who become involved in enforcement of mere statutes, civil or criminal in nature and otherwise, act as mere clerks of the involved agency. The word administrative is synonymous with the word executive. The word administrative connotes of or pertains to administration, especially management, as by managing or conducting, superintending the execution, application, or conduct of persons or things. Thus, administrative acts are those acts which are necessary to carry out legislative policies and purposes already declared by the legislative body. So executive is legislative. So it's a bill of attainder because of that. In fact, it's common to use the two words in tandem. Ministerial officers are incompetent to receive grants of judicial power from the legislature. They're acting, attempting to exercise such. Judge the proceeding as nothing. Whoops. Such has been the law from the days of Marshal Saya. So let's look at history a little bit. In 1861, the Southern states walked out of Congress. Congress failed to have a quorum. Congress could not conduct business. And on 15th of April, 1861, Executive Order Number 1 by Lincoln ordered Congress to reconvene at 1258. Congress, and in 1871, Congress created a municipal corporation, which is, remember, municipal is convertible phrase with the word, civil law, Roman civil law are convertible phrases with municipal law. The Supreme Court ruled in a case that Lincoln failed to like, and I guess maybe it wasn't ex parte Milligan, but I know that they ruled on a case Lincoln failed to like, and Lincoln sent troops to the Supreme Court, resulted in Rule 45. And Rule 45 says all process of this court issues in the name of the President of the United States. United States District Court is not a true United States court established under Article 3 to administer the judicial power of the United States, but was created by virtue of the sovereign congressional faculty, legislative, Article 4, Section 3, making all needful rules and regulations. In other words, they're administrating bills of attainder. Congress passed the Code of Law for the District of Columbia, which is now known as United States Code, and all courts, federal and state, operate under. There's no common law offenses against the United States, only those acts which Congress has forbidden with penalties for disobedience of its command or crimes. Derogation of common law equals the inferior court of limited jurisdiction. So by statute, the legislature may create an offense in the same enactment, provide exceptions to its application. Derogation of common law means inferior court of limited jurisdiction. The Republican is the only form of government which is not eternally at open or secret war with the rights of mankind. Quasi-contracts. Yeah, they're getting into a quasi-contract. And it's a subset. In its origin and action of tort, a subset was soon transformed into an action of contract, becoming afterwards a remedy where there was neither tort nor contract, based at first upon an express promise. It was afterwards supported upon an implied promise and even upon a fictitious promise. They lay awake at night to this crap. Introduced as a special manifestation of the action on the case, it soon acquired the dignity of a distinct form of action which superseded debt. These are all commercial words. Superseded debt can be concurrent with account, case upon a bailment, a warranty, bills of exchange, competed with equity in the case of essentially equitable quasi-contracts. Growing out of the principle of unjust enrichment, surely it would be hard to find a better illustration of the flexibility and power of self-development of common law. Black's Law Dictionary, 8th edition. Both in Roman and English law, okay, there's where the Roman law comes in. So the Roman law was in England too. There are certain obligations which were not in truth contractual, but the law treats as if they were. They are contractual law, but not in fact, being the subject matter of a fictitious expansion of the sphere of contract to cover obligations which do not in reality fall within it. So that's Roman law from the Vatican. Constructive quasi-contracts are based solely upon the legal fiction or fiction of law. A penal action is an action on a penal statute. Remember the Bill of Pains and Penalties. Action for recovery of penalty given by statute. Where an action is found entirely on a statute, the only object of it is to recover a penalty or forfeiture. Such action is a penal action. Penalty, Bill of Pains and Penalties. The words penal and penalty in the strict primary sense denote a punishment, whether corporal or pecuniary, imposed and enforced by the state for a crime or offense against this in compliance with an agreement. Quasi-contract. The words forfeit and penalty are substantially synonymous. Bill of pains and penalties. Unconstitutional. Pecuniary cause. Remember I talked about pecuniary up here. Where is it? Right here. The word penalty and penal and penalty are in the strict primary sense denote a punishment, whether corporal or pecuniary. Pecuniary cause. Such cause arise either from the withholding of ecclesiastical dues or the doing or neglecting some act related to the church. So again, that's unconstitutional. Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion, whereby some damage accrues to the plaintiff towards obtaining satisfaction for which he is permitted to institute a suit in a spiritual court. Such, for instance, are the subtraction or withholdings of tithes from the parson or vicar, the non-payment of ecclesiastical dues to the clergy as pensions or mortuaries or compositions and the like. And that's Book 3 on Blackstone's Commentaries on the Laws of England. Penal action is one founded entirely on statute. Well, why is that surprise? It's Roman law. Brought for the sole object of recovering a penalty or forfeiture imposed as punishment for a specific offense, while remedial action is one brought to obtain compensation or indemnity. Penal action is a civil suit. They call it quasi-criminal because it's a quasi-contract. Brought for recovery of a statutory forfeiture when inflicted as punishment for an offense against the public. On the other, to private injuries in which the party aggrieved may by statute recover punitive damages. The Republic is the only form of government which is not eternally at open or secret war with the rights of mankind. The United States shall guarantee to every state in this union a republican form of government. Article 4, Section 4. People don't even know what a republican form of government is. As one of we the people, the demandant is a state in this union because we the people are the state. The state does not owe its origin to the government of the United States in the highest or any of its branches. It was in existence before it. It derives its authority from the same pure and sacred source as itself, the voluntary and deliberate choice of the people. A republican form of government fails to include the District of Columbia Commerce Clause on Article 1, Section 8, Clause 3 because of Article 1, Section 8, Clause 17. To exercise exclusive legislation in all cases whatsoever over such district not exceeding 10 miles square as made by cession of particular states and the acceptance of Congress become the seat of government of the United States. It's Article 1, Section 8, Clause 17.
I noticed an interesting word there, over.
Over.
So in our common law, there is no over. Like the legislation is over the district.
Right.
Like many people for years used to say, we overstand the Constitution. It always sounded, I just never understood how true that was. We overstand the Constitution.
Right. Stand over.
And so that's this exclusive legislation is over such district.
Right.
It goes to your proof of what you've been saying.
This Constitution and the laws of the United States, which you made in pursuance thereof, and all treaties made or which shall be made under authority of the United States, shall be the supreme law of the land, and the judges in every state shall be bound thereby, anything in the constitutional laws of any state to the contrary notwithstanding. In Canada, that's in Canada and the U.S., I can show it, and it's probably the same in every country. Can't prove it. I mean, I have to go through all their codes. Every corporation, for all its purposes, is an agency of the bitch, or the son of a bitch now. The Government Corporation Operation Act of Canada. Section 2, definitions in this act. Owned means subject to the regulations. Canadian Ownership and Control Determination Act. The Congress shall have power to dispose of and make all needful rules and regulations respecting the territory or the property belonging to the United States. That's Article 4, Section 3, Clause 2. Citizen is other U.S. citizens, other property belong to the United States. This is McCullough versus Maryland. All subjects over which the sovereign power of a state extends are objects of taxation, but those over which it does not extend are upon the soundest principles exempt from taxation. This proposition may also be pronounced self-evident. The sovereignty of a state extends to everything which exists by its own authority, is introduced by its permission. But does it extend to those means which are employed by Congress to carry into execution powers conferred on that body by the people of the United States? We think it demonstrable that it does not. Those powers are not given by the people of a single state. They're given by the people of the United States to a government whose laws made in pursuance of the Constitution are declared to be supreme. Consequently, the people of a single state cannot confer a sovereignty which will extend over them. When a state forms a constitution which is approved by Congress, it's a stop to deny its validity. That's why when the executive branch goes and says the 14th Amendment's ratified, the courts won't dispute it. Okay, you cannot bring it up that it's not properly ratified. I'm not sure how you can deal with that. That's probably a defect in the Constitution. How do you deal with dishonest officials? Anyways, when a state forms when a state forms a constitution, it's a stop to deny its validity. The action of Congress cannot be inquired into, for the judicial is bound to follow the political action of the political department.
I may have an answer for this. How do we deal with dishonest officials?
Impeach them, get them removed.
Okay, but see, they're only dishonest because their actions are only applicable to the Sestakate Trust.
Well, you're giving them an excuse.
No. The point being is when they act upon us, the man, by definition, that is a crime.
Yeah, right. Yeah,
so that's how we deal with them.
Yeah, I suppose, yeah. But how do you deal with the fact that they claimed it was constitutional when it wasn't?
Because they're operating under the 1871. That's the.
I think that's giving them an out. It's treason when they're doing that.
I'm not giving them an out. I'm telling you how they justify it, and so.
I don't care what they justify.
So the question is, what oath do they have? What is their oath to? The good news is, it's to the Constitution of the United States. But the act that they made upon us was under the Constitution of the United States of America. Therefore,
yeah, I think that you're letting them off the hook. They routinely unlawfully arrest you with the objective of you exercising your right to resist their unlawful arrest, so the military police can have an excuse to murder you. They're engaging in their endless wars to get you into their killing fields. Either way, their bankster handlers get to pillage all the fake money in the Treasury direct accounts. Judicial royalties with their warfare, okay, issuing or drawing a warrant of arrest, they get a commission. Issuing a commitment, okay, they get a commission. When they sign you into prison, they get a commission. Drawing a bond, they get a commission. Transcripts, they get a commission. They're getting commissions all over the place. It's all about selling you into slavery. Roman law is all about slavery. The fake judge operating under Roman law is busy making money by selling you into slavery, and the attorneys are working for them. That's how they populate the prisons. There's more people in Texas and Texas prisons as a percentage of the population than there are in Russia, more in the Soviet Union, more in Russia. They call them a gulag. It's a gulag here. Courts ecclesiastical. The proceedings in the ecclesiastical courts, according to the civil and canon law, civil law, right? That's Roman law. By citation, libel, answer upon oath, proof of witnesses, and presumptions. And after sentence for contempt, by excommunication. And a sentence is disliked. If you didn't like your sentence, you can appeal. It's all about ecclesiastical courts. Administrator. Remember, we want to know why is Trump an administrator? Well, here it is. Administrator is a person authorized to manage the distribution of the estate of an intestate or of a testator who has no executor. English law administrators are officers of the ordinary. Ordinary is an ecclesiastical court. Appointed by him in pursuance of the statute, their title and authority are derived exclusively from the ecclesiastical judge by letters called letters of administration. That's what Trump has to do when he goes to see the Vatican, is he gets letters of administration. The first ordinary was appointed administrator, and the Statute of Westminster required the ordinary to appoint the next of kin and the relations by blood of the deceased. Court of the ordinary. In American law, a court which has jurisdiction of the probate and wills of the regulation and management of decedents' estates. Such courts exist in Georgia, New Jersey, South Carolina, and Texas. This was, of course, when this was published, 1856. Whether they exist now, I don't think they do. But they did. And they just have a different name now. Yeah, exactly.
We'll see. Oh, interesting. Courts of the ordinary. Yeah.
Inquisition. They're putting you through an inquisition. This is a proceeding in ecclesiastical courts. Assent to their acts of pretended legislation. For transporting us beyond seas to be tried for pretended offenses. That's talking about the minor estate. For imposing taxes on us without our consent. That's talking about the minor estate. Subjecting us to a jurisdiction cases of the trial by jury, that's Roman law. For taking away our charters, abolishing our most valuable laws, altering fundamentally the forms of our government, Roman law. He's abdicated government here by declaring us out of his protection and waging war against us, Roman law. Check out my other videos, Bankster Thieves playlist, Roman cult playlist, bankrupt corporate so-called governments, bar members 1 through 9, do-it-yourself how not to volunteer for the selective service in the draft, martial laws here, do-it-yourself no income tax, do-it-yourself free mail, kangaroo courts 1 through 34, Canada border pigs playlist, bar members and their satanic connections playlist. So now we're going to talk a little bit about the Vatican, and we're not talking about people who happen to be Catholic. Okay, I have many wonderful friends who are Catholic. A friend who is Catholic has been telling me for years about the satanic nature of the Vatican, and I refused to believe it until the evidence became overwhelming. I believe that many Catholic priests, bishops, and even cardinals are also good people. They're not all bad, but the Vatican itself is definitely satanic. I think I talked about this already. In 1990s, there was a Catholic monk by the name of Father Malachi Martin who appeared on Coast to Coast AM talk radio program and told everyone that in 1955 Satan took over the Vatican. Shortly after that, he turned up dead. Coast to Coast AM's a talk radio program that's on in the middle of the night. My history of the Jesuits is not eloquently written. It's unsupported. It is supported by unquestionable authorities and is very horrible, very particular, and very horrible. There, the Jesuit order's restoration in 1814 by Pope Pius VII is indeed a step towards darkness, cruelty, despotism, and death. I do not like the appearance of the Jesuits. This is the Society of Ignatius de Loyola. John Adams, second president of the United States. Within 20 years, this country is going to rule the world. Kings and emperors will soon pass away, and the democracy of the United States will take their place. When the United States rules the world, the Catholic Church will rule the world. And that's James E. Quigley, Archbishop, Roman Catholic Archbishop James E. Quigley, Chicago Daily Tribune, May 5th, 1903. So there we have some Roman conquest. Okay, this is the pimp or the Pope. Frank, as some people I know like to call him Frank. Of course, he's gone now, anyways. But anyways, so this text on here is hard to read. 24th of September 2015. We can read that. I've got the text down here on the next page. So we'll start with this text, pointing at this right here. This Roman. It's called a Roman Achaea military staff, carried in battle by all Roman commands, planted on all conquered nations. Okay, so that's pointing at this military staff right here. And then this one here is pointing at Biden, actually. Biden is the guy that was there. Devout Roman Catholic, honorary degree from Jesuit Scranton University. And then this is pointing at these two Roman fascia. This text right here.
A question for you: if the U.S., the District of Columbia, has been a conquered nation, does that, by extension, conquer the United States of America outside of that?
Well, you think it wouldn't.
Correct. And I think that perhaps that's what the Founding Fathers understood when they allowed the United States to be created. They perhaps said, okay, fine, no matter what happens there, up to 10 square miles.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying.
And that's where we, even to this day, are able to defend ourselves.
Yeah, I think that, but they're liars. They're liars, thieves, and murderers, and so they're going to try and finagle all sorts of stuff. You know what I mean?
I do, but that's where the original Constitution and the founding documents are still there for us, which causes the judges to run still when we bring anything up, because they know at the end of the day they lose based upon those organic laws. Potentially. Yeah. I mean, maybe that's how good the founding fathers
I think that they just do whatever they want to do.
Yeah, most of them say, don't bring that Constitution in here. It has no
That's right.
effect.
Yeah. Anyways, so Roman bundle of rods bound to a weapon, symbolizing subservient under the rule of a single man. And that's this text here pointing at these fascias right here. Now, this text right here pointing at Biener, who was the Speaker of the House at the time. Devout Roman Catholic, trained by Jesuits, installed first Jesuit chaplain to the house. And this here, to get a better picture of it in regular good light, is showing that Roman Achaea military staff right here, these Roman fascias right here. So to give you an idea. Roman cult, murder, and slavery. Why do you think Donald Trump's first international trip includes the Roman cult on the itinerary? Do you think that Pope Inc. looks so angry in his pictures with Donald Trump? There he's just laughing and chuckling with Obama, okay, that Obama is busy trying to overthrow the government. And here, Trump is trying to restore the government. And he's not too happy about that, is he? Restore the Constitution. Looks like a little devil, really. And both of them, he looks like a little devil, sitting there laughing and chuckling. And there, he's just not very happy at all. Know your popes. After massacring the entire populace, the eighth indulged in menages with a married woman and her daughter and became renowned through Rome as a shameless pedophile. He famously declared that having sex with young boys was no more a sin than rubbing one hand against the other. The poet Dante reserved a place for him in the 8th circle of hell. "37, this is Know Your Popes, number 9. 37 of his own clergy member witnessed and professed against John the 23rd on charges of fornication, adultery, incest, sodomy, simony, theft, and murder. He also had a harem of mistresses in Boulogne, numbering 200, consisting mostly, if not entirely, of nuns." And isn't that what the Bible talks about? All the whores? That was something I was going to put in. The bent crucifix is a sinister symbol used by Satanists in the 6th century that had been revived at the time of Vatican II. This was a bent or broken cross in which displayed a repulsive, distorted figure of the Messiah, which the black magicians and sorcerers of the Middle Ages had made use of to represent the biblical term mark of the beast. Yet not only Paul VI, but his successors, the 2 John Pauls, carried that object, held it up to be revered by crowds who had not the slightest idea that it stood for false Messiah. On page 56, Compton prints a picture of the current Pope, John Paul II, holding his bent or broken cross, just as we have shown. And that's this right here. Yeah. "I will show unto thee the judgment of the great whore that sitteth upon many waters, with whom the kings of the earth have committed fornication, and the inhabitants of the earth have been made drunk with the wine of her fornication." So a whore sells himself for money. Fornication's illicit activity. Maybe that's fake money, or maybe that's usury. I don't know. I'm just guessing here. And here is mind which hath wisdom. The 7 heads are 7 mountains on which the woman sitteth. So Rome is the city of 7 hills. We're going to learn a little bit more here. Verse 12 and 13, it says, "And the 10 horns which thou sawest are 10 kings which have received no kingdom as yet, but receive power as kings 1 hour with the beast. These have one mind, and shall give their power and strength unto the beast." And Revelation 17:15, "He saith unto me, the waters which thou saw, where the horse sitteth, are peoples, multitude, nations, and tongues." So that really sounds like the Vatican. "The 10 horns which thou sawest upon the beast, they shall hate the whore, and shall make her desolate and naked, shall eat her flesh, and burn her with fire. For God hath put in their hearts to fulfill his will, to agree and give their kingdom unto the beast, until the words of God shall be fulfilled. And the woman which thou sawest is that great city which reigneth over the kings of the earth." So, I'm guessing Rome. The city's 7 hills, right? Is the great city that reigns over the kings of the earth. So it could only be, in my opinion, London, New York, or Rome.
Actually,
Yeah.
The reason why Rome, Maryland, one of the reasons they loved it was there's 7 hills there. That's why it was called Rome, Maryland.
I wasn't aware of that, but it's certainly not a great city, and it's not really well known, and it doesn't rule over the whole earth. But that's interesting.
Well, it does by virtue of the military.
Why?
The United States military.
What about it? What's that got to do with Rome, Maryland?
Rome, Maryland is where the capital is.
Oh, is that right? The capital of Maryland?
No, Rome, Maryland is where the capital is.
Sorry, I'm still not getting it.
DC.
Washington, D.C., where the capital is. There's 7 hills. It was called Rome, Maryland before it became District of Columbia.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
I didn't know that. Wow, that's interesting. Holy cow. That certainly creates all...
So, let's say there were some Catholic priests sailing in on a boat, saw the 7 hills, said, "Wouldn't this be a great place to set up shop?" They named it Rome, Maryland, up until...
Well, yeah. Well, it says here, says here, the 7 heads are 7 mountains on which the woman sitteth. Okay, so it's not saying what the city is.
Exactly. So that doesn't mean that there's only
Sitteth
one.
upon many waters, kings of the earth have committed, inhabitants of the earth have been made drunk with the wine of the fornication. The fake money, I'm guessing that's fake money, but anyways, and then it says the 10 horns are 10 kingdoms, no power, but receive power 1 hour with the beast, have one, and shall give their power to the beast. The water which the worm sitteth are peoples, multitudes, nations, okay. And then 10 horns shall hate the whore, shall make her desolate and naked, they'll eat her flesh, burn her with fire. God hath put, you never know. If that's the case, then Washington, D.C. could definitely fall into that, I'll tell you.
Right.
I didn't know that at all, man.
Right. And it's provable fact. You just go online, it'll tell you.
Wow.
There's no. And Maryland was the only Catholic colony.
Well, I knew that.
And
That's interesting.
Rome, Maryland is right on the Potomac where the capital now sits.
Wow.
It's one of the hills. It sits on one of the hills.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, that's something to think about. That's now give me a whole new area to think about here. I'll tell you, man. So Pope Francis, it's actually Frank. Okay, that's what the Catholics call him, is Frank. Commits idolatry at the feet of a Mary statue. Van Rompuy, the president of the European Council, stated recently, we're all Jesuits. He's referring to those prominent European leaders with whom he is developing the Roman Catholic architecture for the future Europe. It creates unbreakable ties, so there is a Jesuits International. This is the Lateran Pact. I don't know if you know this or not. The sovereignty and exclusive jurisdiction over the Vatican City, which Italy recognizes that pertaining to the Holy See, forbid any intervention therein on the part of the Italian government, or that any authority over that of the Holy See shall be there acknowledged. So basically, they're saying that the Vatican City, that it's a 40-foot wall too, by the way, that wall around the Vatican, is basically a sovereign territory all by itself. And it's interesting that you remember Ratzinger, Pope Benedict resigned, and the rumor is, I don't know for a fact, but the rumor is, Kevin Annett says that it's because that the Italian police were going to arrest him if he set foot outside the Vatican. So he resigned, and he stayed in the Vatican for the rest of his life till he died, because of the International Common Law Court that had prosecuted him and convicted him of rape, murder, all sorts of stuff. Anyways, that's a rumor. I don't know. Certainly food for thought. Papal bull Dum Diversus, 18th of June, 1452. Pope Nicholas V issued the papal bull Dum Diversus on 18th of June, 1452. It authorized Alfonso V of Portugal, the King of Portugal, to reduce any Saracens and pagans or any other unbelievers to perpetual slavery. This facilitated the Portuguese slave trade from West Africa. The same pope wrote the bull Romanus Pontifex on January 5th, 1455. To the same Alfonso, on the follow-up as Dum Diversus, it extended to the Catholic nations of Europe dominion over discovered lands under the Age of Discovery. Along with sanctifying the seizure of non-Christian lands, it encouraged the enslavement of native non-Christian peoples in Africa and the New World. The reason I even heard about this was a person. We weighing all in singular the premises with due mediation, and noting that since we had formerly by other letters of ours granted, among other things, free and ample faculty to the aforesaid King Alfonso to invade, search out, capture, vanquish, and subdue all Saracens and pagans whatever, and other enemies of Christ wheresoever placed, and the kingdoms, dukedoms, principalities, dominions, possessions, and all movable and immovable goods whatsoever held and possessed by them, and to reduce their persons to perpetual slavery, and to apply and appropriate to himself and his successors the kingdoms, dukedoms, counties, principalities, dominions, possessions, and goods, and to convert them to his and their use and profit, by having secured the said faculty, the said King Alfonso, or by his authority the aforesaid infant, justly and lawfully has acquired, possessed, and doth possess these islands, lands, harbors, and seas, and they do of right belong and pertain to the said King Alfonso and his successors. In 1493, Alexander VI issued a bull inter serrera, stating one Christian nation did not have the right to establish dominion over lands previously dominated by another Christian nation, thus establishing the law of nations. It's kind of interesting. Together, the Dum Diversus, the Romanus Pontifex, and the Inter Serrera came to serve as the basis and justification for the doctrine of discovery, the global slave trade of the 15th and 16th centuries, and the age of imperialism. From 1203 to 1805, 50 million Christians died, suffering at the hands of Rome because they believed in Christ alone. They died through Europe, especially Spain. This is talking about the Spanish Inquisition. For they saw all but Christ as vain, he who suffered by his death for men to save them from their awful sin. 600 years of martyred saints that history cannot erase. With iron heel and iron hand, the Roman popes rule the land. The Rothschilds have been part of the Jesuit order since way before 1776. The Maltese cross indicates membership and allegiance of the Sovereign Military Order of Malta, a Masonic order created in 1099 by direct descendants of Roman emperors, of which the Jesuit order is a brand. The Vatican's Holocaust. This is a friend of mine that's Catholic sent this to me. Matter of fact, he's the friend that was talking about the satanic nature of the Vatican. The sensational account of the most horrifying religious massacre of the 20th century by Averell Manhattan, Knight of Malta. Averell Manhattan is the world's foremost authority on Roman Catholicism and politics, a resident of London during World War II. He operated a radio station called Radio Freedom, broadcasting to occupied Europe. He was the author of over 30 books, including the bestseller The Vatican and World Politics, twice Book of the Month, and going through 57 editions. He was a Great Briton who risked his life daily to expose some of the darkest secrets of the papacy. His books were #1 on the Forbidden Index for the past 50 years. Editors note this issue from 1986. In 2006, the record is now 70 years on the Forbidden Book list. Preface to the American edition. The Vatican's Holocaust is not a misnomer, an accusation, and even less a speculation. It is an historical fact. Rabid nationalism and religious dogmatism were its two main ingredients. During the existence of Croatia as an independent Catholic state, over 700,000 men, women, and children perished. Many were executed, tortured, died of starvation, buried alive, or were burned to death. Hundreds were forced to become Catholic. Catholic padres ran concentration camps. Catholic priests were officers of the military corps, which committed such atrocities. 700,000 in a total population of a few million proportionally would be as if 1/3 of the U.S. population had been exterminated by a Catholic militia. What has been gathered in this book will vindicate the veracity of these facts. Dates, names, places, as well as photos are there to prove them. They should become known to the American public, not to foster vindictiveness, but to warn them of the danger which racial temporary nation, whether in Europe or in the New World. This work should be assessed without prejudice as a lesson, but even more vital as a warning for the future of the Americans, beginning with that of the USA. Averell Manhattan, 1986. An armed Serbia, editor's note, an armed Serbia would have easily prevented this Holocaust. Thank God for the Second Amendment to the Constitution, which guarantees the right to bear arms. Freedom of religion and armed citizenry go hand in hand as the only guarantee that this won't happen in the U.S. Editor's note, it is the Vatican's one world government that doesn't want you to have the right to own arms or to use any means to defend yourself. Did you know that? The Vatican's one world government. Pope claims you're not Christian if you own a gun. Well, I claim he's not Christian. So how does he know? This is the Concordat of 1933 that was signed between Hitler and the Vatican. The wearing of clerical dress or religious habit by lay people or by members of the clergy or religious orders by whom this use is forbidden by definitive and legal valid directive of the competent ecclesiastical authority and officially communicated to the state authority is liable to the same penalty by the state as the misuse of the military uniform. In other words, in wartime, if you're caught wearing a military uniform without authority, you're considered a spy and summarily executed.
Repeat that? If what?
In wartime,
In wartime?
if you're caught wearing a military uniform without authority, you're considered a spy and summarily executed. That's true. This is the Jewish Encyclopedia, 1901 to 1906, Volume 2, page 497. It says up here at the top, nationalist and reactionary parties in France desired to counterbalance the Semitic influence of the Rothschilds by establishing a banking concern which should be essentially Catholic. And then if you go down here, in a somewhat curious sequel to the attempts to set up a Catholic competitor to the Rothschilds, that at the present the latter, the Rothschilds, are the guardians of the papal treasurer. Anyways, for what that's worth. When government has all the guns, then you don't look too well. Any society that would give up a little liberty to gain a little security will deserve neither and lose both. Just following orders is not never a valid excuse or justification for immoral criminal behavior, and this lame attempt to abdicate personal responsibility should never be accepted as a valid excuse for such behavior. Pope claims you're not Christian if you own a gun. Every great injustice has been at the hands of someone just following orders. Order followers, the servants of evil. You assist an evil system most effectively by obeying its orders and decrees. An evil system never deserves such allegiance. Allegiance to it means partaking of the evil. A good person will resist an evil system with his or her whole soul. Order followers are the ones that keep the system of slavery in place. Mark Passio. Some people be like, I need more proof. I can't see it. Law-abiding citizens, brave soldiers doing their job. Order followers, those who make their fortunes from you being sick, are the same people who tell you what will make you well. It's about time to do your own research. The war is not meant to be won, it's meant to be continuous. Why does government want to ban semi-automatic rifles? Because they know you won't get into boxcars willingly. The Republican is the only form of gun rights of mankind. China established gun control in 1935. From 1948 to 1952, 20 million political dissidents unable to defend themselves were rounded up and exterminated. Pope claims you're not Christian if you own a gun. The illusion of the left and the right, of free choice, it all ends up the same place. The only reason for disarming the people is to make them powerless against tyranny. We will take your guns because we have made an agreement to do so called freedom from war. The United States is number 3 in murders throughout the world. If you remove number 1, Chicago, number 2, Detroit, number 3, Washington, D.C., number 4, St. Louis, number 5, New Orleans, The United States is then 189th out of 193 countries in the entire world. P.S. All 5 cities have strict gun control laws and are run by Democrats. War is when your government tells you who the enemy is. Revolution is when you figure it out for yourself. The original assault rifle, 1774, banned from import. 1775, British attempt confiscation. 1776, revolution. When liberty and freedom are at stake, your silence isn't golden, it's yellow. I didn't say it'd be easy, I say it would be the truth. It's time to get unplugged. So the Declaration of Independence, this is the preamble. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they're endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that to pursue these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed, that whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or abolish it, and to institute new government, laying its foundation on such principles and organizing its powers in such forms. Prudence indeed will dictate that governments long established should not be changed for light and transient causes, and accordingly all experience has shown that mankind are more disposed to suffer while evils are sufferable than to right themselves by abolishing the forms to which they are accustomed. But when a long train of abuses and usurpations, pursuing invariably the same object, evinces a design to reduce them under absolute despotism, that's dictatorship, it is their right, it is their duty to throw off such government and provide new guards for their future security. The Republican is the only form of government not eternally at open or secret war with the rights of mankind. So why do you think the Satanist Pope was so happy and excited with the communist Obama and looked so upset with Trump? Maybe it's because Obama's doing what Pope wants him to do. Maybe it's because Pope knows Trump is not going to be too cooperative with his agenda. Maybe it's because Trump is going to cause him a lot of problems. You know, he doesn't look too happy about it. Things might seem to be taking too long, but there is a sequence. Arrests have already taken place, but there will be some very public arrests soon. Okay, maybe this summer, maybe before the summer. There's a thing called due process of law. They have to do things to lay a foundation for the rest. He needs our help and support. Trump is restoring the republic together with 200 generals in the Pentagon, some retired. He needs our help and support. And that's the end of it. Let's see what's happening on the chat. Nothing to speak of. Okay, well, I guess that's about it. Any questions in the chat? Put your questions in all block capital letters. Any questions here?
No. I just have one comment. The definition of Bouvier of Republican government is simply a government of the people.
Yeah, right. Well, and I think that's why Trump is so adamant about making sure that the elections are honest elections, because I think that if we get honest elections, then that's half the battle. I mean, if you don't have if you have people stealing the elections, then you definitely don't have a government of the people, you know. And so you got to minimum have the honest elections. If the people are too stupid to figure out what's going on, then, you know, that's on them, I guess, you know.
Well,
but there's a lot of people that are really on top of things in America.
I think the other thing is changing the party system. You vote for somebody, a representative from your district. That's the intention,
right?
And that's what it should be. But that went by like the dodo years and years ago, because it's party based. You vote for the party. You don't vote for whoever's.
Not the U.S.
President.
Not the U.S. You can remove people from office here. In Canada, in the parliamentary system, it's that way for sure. But in the U.S., you can remove I mean, look at they removed the California governor there a couple times.
Yeah, you can recall him.
Yeah.
But
And-
you still end up, the majority of people, the mindset is party based.
Oh, I agree. The parties are corrupt.
Yeah.
And I think the founding fathers didn't intend to have parties, quite frankly.
No.
But you know, I agree. The parties are corrupt for sure. But you can still recall them anyways. And so if they're not doing what you want them to do, then you can get them removed. I think that there's going to be.
And even that process is corrupt because they tried twice with Newsom, and he still retained his power.
I think Newsom stole those elections. Quite frankly, I mean they did remove like Schwarzenegger was in there because the judge or the governor got removed. But Newsom seems to be. I think that again that goes back to stealing the elections. It's not honest elections. You know what I mean? And so, but you know, I agree. There's definitely corruption there, but we need to first of all get the honest elections, and that's a huge amount of the shit is going to hit the fan. I mean, we're going to be going to war. We are at war, really.
Yeah.
And this is not just a little war. It's going to be with China, and so now it's not like we're doing some police action. This is like an all-out, knockdown, drag-out war. It says here. Yeah. So, anyways, all right. Well, I think I'm going to end the live stream. Thanks for watching, everybody on YouTube. We're ending it now.